The alien warrior woman, Kael'thra, stood atop the jagged cliffs of the human colony, her crimson armor glinting under the twin moons. Her people, the Zorathians, were known across the galaxy as fierce conquerors, unyielding in battle and unimpressed by weakness. Kael'thra had spent her life honing her skills, her body a weapon, her mind a fortress. She had fought in 100 battles, her name whispered in fear by her enemies. And yet, as she gazed down at the human settlement below, she felt nothing but disdain. Humans. The word itself was synonymous with cowardice in her culture. They were soft, fragile creatures who relied on technology and trickery rather than strength and honor. They fled from battle, hid behind their machines, and begged for mercy when confronted. Kael'thra had seen it herself during the Zorathian invasion of Earth. The humans had surrendered without a fight, their leaders groveling for peace. It had been a disappointing campaign, one that only reinforced her belief that humans were unworthy of respect. But now, as she prepared to descend upon this colony, she wondered if this mission was even worth her time. The humans here were nothing more than farmers and scientists, hardly a challenge for a warrior of her caliber. Still, orders were orders. The Zorathian High Command had demanded the colony's submission, and Kael'thra was here to ensure it. She leapt from the cliff, her jetpack humming as she descended gracefully to the ground. Her arrival was met with silence. The humans had seen her coming, and now they cowered in their homes, their fear palpable. Kael'thra sneered. Pathetic. She strode through the settlement, her plasma blade glowing at her side. Come out, humans, she bellowed, her voice echoing through the empty streets. Your world belongs to the Zorathian Empire now. Surrender, and you will be spared. No one answered. The colony was eerily quiet, save for the rustling of leaves in the wind. Kael'thra's patience wore thin. She kicked open the door of the nearest building, ready to drag the humans out herself. But what she found inside stopped her in her tracks. A single human stood in the center of the room, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. He was tall for a human, with broad shoulders and a calm demeanor. His eyes, a piercing blue, met hers without fear. Kael'thra hesitated. This was not the reaction she had expected. You're not hiding, she said, her voice tinged with suspicion. The human shook his head. No, I'm not. Why? Because hiding won't change anything, he replied. You're here to take our colony. I can't stop you, but I won't cower. Kael'thra narrowed her eyes. You're brave for a human, or foolish. The man smiled faintly, maybe a little of both. My name is Elias, by the way. She ignored the introduction. Where are the others? Gone, Elias said. They evacuated when they saw your ship. I stayed behind to make sure they got away safely. Kael'thra's grip tightened on her blade. You sacrificed yourself for them? I did. Why? They left you to die. Elias shrugged. That's what we do. We look out for each other, even if it means putting ourselves in danger. Kael'thra was silent for a moment, studying him. There was something about this human that intrigued her, something she couldn't quite understand. He was unarmed, unarmored, and yet he stood before her without fear. It made no sense. You're not like the others, she said at last. I'm just a man, Elias replied. But if you're going to kill me, I'd appreciate it if you made it quick. Kael'thra hesitated. Killing him would be easy. A single stroke of her blade, and it would be over. But something held her back. She had expected fear, begging, desperation. Instead, she found courage, dignity, and a quiet strength that defied her understanding. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why risk your life for people who abandoned you? Elias met her gaze. Because it's the right thing to do. Because if I don't stand up for them, who will? Kael'thra felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Doubt. Her entire life, She had been taught that strength was everything, that mercy was weakness, that honor came only through conquest. But this human, this fragile, soft creature, was challenging everything she believed. "You're wasting my time," she growled, raising her blade. But even as she did, she knew she couldn't strike him down. Not like this. Elias closed his eyes, waiting for the end. But the blow never came. When he opened his eyes again, Kael'thra had lowered her weapon. "Go," she said, her voice cold. "Leave this place and never return. If I see you again, I won't hesitate." Elias blinked in surprise. "You're letting me go? Consider a moment of weakness," she snapped. "Now go, before I change my mind." He nodded slowly, then turned and walked away. Kael'thra watched him go, a strange feeling stirring in her chest. She told herself it was nothing, that she had simply spared him out of pity. But deep down, she knew the truth. This human had shown her something she had never seen before, something that shook her to her core. Weeks passed, and Kael'thra found herself unable to forget the encounter. She tried to dismiss it, to focus on her duties, but the memory of Elias haunted her. She had seen courage in his eyes, a courage that defied logic, that defied everything she had been taught. It gnawed at her, challenging her beliefs, forcing her to question everything she thought she knew. Finally, she could take it no longer. She returned to the human colony, determined to find answers. But when she arrived, she found it abandoned, the buildings empty and silent. She searched for hours, but there was no sign of Elias or the others. Just as she was about to leave, she heard a noise behind her. She spun around, her blade at the ready, and found herself face to face with Elias once again. "You came back," he said, his voice calm. "I had to," Kael'thra replied. "I need to understand." "Understand what?" "Why you did it. Why you stayed behind. Why you were willing to die for people who left you." Elias smiled faintly. "I told you before. It's the right thing to do." "But why?" Kael'thra demanded. "What do you gain from it? What is the point of sacrificing yourself for others?" Elias was silent for a moment. Then he said, "It's not about gaining something. It's about who we are. Humans aren't perfect. We're flawed, fragile, and sometimes cowardly. But we're also capable of great courage, of selflessness, of love. We fight for each other, not because it's easy, but because it's who we are." Kael'thra stared at him, her mind racing. She had spent her life believing that strength was everything, that mercy was weakness. But now, faced with this human's quiet courage, she began to see things differently. "You've given me much to think about," she said at last. Elias nodded. "I hope you find the answers you're looking for." As she turned to leave, Kael'thra felt a strange sense of peace. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. Humans were not the cowards she had believed them to be. They were something far more complex, far more powerful. And in their fragility, she had found a strength that surpassed even her own. Years later, Kael'thra stood on the bridge of her ship, gazing out at the stars. She had left the Zorathian Empire, renounced her title, and set out on a new path. She had become a protector, a defender of the weak, inspired by the courage of a single human.